everyone, and welcome to another News Coolum video. We have arrived at the LA Auto Show. So, all that's left is I just get my press pass, go in, and start looking at cars. So I'll keep this one as kind of an overview video, just looking at the different electric vehicles, charging providers, whoever happen to be, here, what they're showcasing. I seem to remember that they had 2 press days before, but now it looks like they only have 1. And so I basically have to just sort of jam it. I could have gotten in here a few hours earlier, but with traffic and all of that, it wasn't going to happen. So I valued sleeping in an hour rather than spending that time awake sitting in traffic. So I should still have at least about 6 hours plus on the floor, which is probably more than I have endurance for, but hey, there's a lot to cover, so we'll see what we can get. All right, so that was pretty fun. Just to give a rundown of what I saw here at the LA Auto Show, we're seeing a lot more presence by a lot more EV automakers. Now, a lot of the automakers that I've seen here were also present at Fully Charged Live. Indy was there. For instance, they also had their car showcased here. They had their rolling chassis, or at least just the frame, battery pack, and drive motor configuration. I'm kind of curious, just based on looking at that construction, there seems to be a lot of room for improvement on that design. So I'm going to be curious to follow Indy to see a little bit more about what they do, how they're running power lines to the rear motor, whether maybe they can shorten up those power lines out of the battery to the front. Just overall, some minor design engineering aspects about maybe the robustness of the battery frame and whether it's a structural component or not. So that was kind of an interesting, it was nice to see them revisiting and following through here. I didn't actually see a dedicated Electrify America display. However, there are a lot of Electrify America chargers just sort of randomly around, almost like product placement. EVgo is doing more of the same too, and this time they actually had a nice Cadillac Lyriq on display at their location. Now, EVgo also had a charger at the Toyota display. Now, Toyota is listing their EVs as prototypes now, but it was kind of interesting to also see an EVgo charger there. We started to see different automakers align with different charging providers and sort of put their chips in on one particular charging provider or another. So Electrify America obviously has like the VW group. A lot of the European automakers are doing promotions with Electrify America. You have like Lucid, you have Ford as well, whereas EVgo up to this point has primarily been with Nissan and GM. But who knows, Toyota, maybe they're going to, throw in with EVgo as well as a provider. There are some other providers here as well. I spoke to the representative from Blink. I have some questions just about their choice in hardware, their locations, where they're placing chargers. We had a decent discussion about just the sort of difficulty in actually placing a charger in the ground, what you have to do in terms of working with the utilities, regulatory commissions, things like that. So it's not just, we want a charger here, let's throw it in, right? It's a lot more difficult than that. In terms of the automakers too, I was very critical about GM and Chevrolet last year because they didn't have anything on display at all. So for someone who doesn't follow GM's electrification plans, they would show up at the LA Auto Show last year and see nothing, not even a reference to the Chevrolet Bolt EV or EUV, possibly because those vehicles were under recall, but realistically, those vehicles were still on the road, and to me, they were something that GM and Chevrolet should have been proud of. But this year is completely different. They pulled out all the stops. They put all of their upcoming electric vehicles out on display. The Chevrolet Silverado, they were actually letting people get into and look at and actually physically touch. A little too crowded for me to get into it. I hate to say it, but with these auto shows, it's more like a sampler, and I don't want to just touch or feel the car. I'll look at them, check them out, see what stands out to me, but I actually want to, if I'm going to look at a car like this, I want to actually get my hands on a car, drive it, charge it, live with it for a little while, and then give my opinion on it. So I'm really more looking at the functional aspects of things than I am at the aesthetic aspect of things. So like the Hyundai Kona Electric, right, is a great car. It's a very capable car. In many ways, it's more capable than the Chevrolet Bolt EV. But if you have room for rear cargo, or if you need seating for adult passengers in the rear, the Hyundai Kona then becomes a less functional offering, and you want to look at something like the Kia Niro EV or the Chevrolet Bolt EUV or EV, right, where it gives you a lot more rear passenger room to work with and rear cargo. So I like to focus a lot more on that functional aspect of things. Speaking of which, VW, another company that's really pulling out all of the stops. It was recently announced that they hit their 500,000 delivery mark ahead of time, like a year ahead of schedule for their ID models, and then they have the ID Buzz on full display here. I actually felt kind of sorry for the ID4 because you saw people piling onto the ID Buzz and pretty much everybody ignoring the ID4, which in my opinion might speak more highly of the ID4 than a lot of people realize, because some people just want a nondescript car, right? They want to go electric. They don't want to have to fill up with gasoline once a week to do their daily commute. but they don't necessarily want to throw out there that they're driving an electric car. So the ID.4 really fits that bill well. So in addition to just being a competent, well put together car, it flies under the radar for a lot of people. And then the ID Buzz, like I said, it's great. They definitely have van camping in mind. It looks like they have a fold down, almost like a cot with a cargo capacity underneath the sleeping area. And so for those of you who do van camping, you know that that's a very important thing. You want to be able to store materials and things underneath your sleeping area, because that's one of the most efficient uses of space. So it's nice to see the ID Buzz engaging with that in mind. Ford, of course, is also showing off their Lightning and their Mustang Mach-E, but really I'm hoping to see a little bit more from Ford as well. Maybe a new model. We know that they have their production targets, and I think the big miss by both GM and Ford, they had some commercial vehicle stuff, but I really would have liked to see GM showcasing their Hydrotech. So they have the Hydrotech MPG, which is a hydrogen fuel cell, basically a mobile generator with a DC fast charger hooked up to it. They were using that to charge up the GMC Hummer EVs during a press release event out in the middle of the desert. That's something that, based on my conversations with some of the other charging providers like Blink, where they're talking about infrastructure making it difficult to implement fast charging stations in some places, something like a hydrogen fuel cell stack to supplement makes a lot of sense, especially if you can produce that sort of renewable hydrogen on site through solar power and electrolysis or whatever else might be available at in situ, right, at that location, because that all of a sudden makes it possible to add infrastructure where infrastructure was difficult to add before. So, and then it got my brain thinking, I'd love to see someone take a Chevrolet Silverado and drive it across country, towing a Hydrotech MPG, and just basically never having to stop at a charging station and just driving across the country with a trailer that they're towing behind their truck. I think that would be hilarious. And then, of course, it is possible that GM develops a range extender using that same sort of hydrogen fuel cell stack. There's no reason for it to be a separate trailer when it could fit in the bed of your truck, right? So there's all sorts of possibilities. I think the big show announcement, right, was the Fiat 500e, which is coming back, and now with DC fast charging. So one of the big problems with the Fiat 500e, amazing little city car, but the fact that you could only level 2 charge it meant that it's short range, made it almost impossible to take on longer trips, sort of like the older Chevrolet Spark EV with only level 2 AC charging. It was very difficult to drive outside of your daily commute with that car. So adding DC fast charging gives people the option for a small, usable city car that's also capable of going on a road trip. So I'm super excited to see that. There were even aftermarket kits to add DC fast charging. I think it's CHAdeMO to the old Fiat 500e, but not necessarily approved or sanctioned or whatever. But in this case, you could add, you don't need to add it, right? You can just buy a Fiat 500e with a CCS connector. And then maybe that's the other news that I need to address, because I did go on a rant about this, but Tesla pushed out their NACS standard, and just in speaking with some unnamed individuals over the course of today, there's a lot of work that has to happen before any automaker considers it and before any charging provider considers it. And maybe that's why they were delaying the CCS adapter for Tesla, is they wanted to announce this first, because I think at this point the cat is out of the bag. When you have something so simple and so easy to use as a CCS adapter for, that's charging Teslas at over 200 kilowatts on the newer charging stations, there's really no need for everyone else to drop what they were doing and pick up a new standard where it's questionable who's going to be making the cables, who's going to be supplying the connectors, who's going to be testing for UL listed safety certifications, IEC safety certifications, and if they do those, what are the limitations of that hardware going to be once it's implemented? So word on the street is no, CCS1 is pretty much here to stay. And that makes sense when you think of it from a global perspective, because there's a reason Tesla announced it as the North American charging standard and not the American charging standard, because Tesla has no superchargers in South America, yet J1772 and CCS1 are represented in South America as well, and they're also represented in parts of Asia. So this NACS adapter might have been, just a dead plug on announcement or even before it was announced. Anyway, so overall, though, I think the show was, it's great. There's a couple of things that I want to check out left. VinFast has an announcement coming soon, in a few minutes actually, that I want to sit in on, because I think they're supposed to be, I think they call it the V8. I'm not super up on their nomenclature, but I'm going to go see what they're doing. I have high hopes for VinFast in terms of if they can get to market and then bring cars to the United States, especially if they're bringing manufacturing to the United States. A few different models that I think would appeal to a lot of American buyers. So it'll be nice to see what they have to say. And then I think Blink has an announcement or a press conference like after 5 o'clock. So we'll see if I'm still standing by then. But overall, those are sort of my closing thoughts. Let me know what you think. If you have a chance to come and visit the LA Auto Show, what did you think? Where do you think maybe we're seeing a lacking of representation from charging providers and automakers, and where do you think this show is going? Because I'll tell you, based on what I'm seeing right now, I would be surprised if there were even a fraction of the internal combustion cars here in the next few years at the LA Auto Show, because it really does seem like most of the interest is with the EVs. If you go to a section like the Chevrolet section, there were easily 10 times as many people looking at the Blazer EV, the Equinox EV, and the Silverado EV than there were looking at the gas-powered Blazer and Equinox and Silverado. So I think just based on crowd appeal for this audience specifically in Los Angeles, I could see this almost becoming, for all intents and purposes, exclusively an electric car venue in the next few years. So I'd love to hear what you think. Like I said, if you have a chance to attend, what you thought of the show. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. It really helps out the channel, and thank you for watching.